So attachment effectively is the main cause of suffering in day-to-day life. This body of ours is the product of attachment, of eons of lifetimes of following attachment. That's what literally has caused us to, like karmic evolution, if you like. We've got this body of 5 senses. That's the result of attachment. So then the whole world we live in is the objects that we have to stick into these senses to bring us satisfaction. That's because of attachment. And then when attachment doesn't get what it wants, anger, all the other dramas come. Is that clear? All right. What else, people? Questions? But attachment, Lama Yeshe said, I told you this, Lama Yeshe said, I can tell you about it for a whole year. And that word for us is really confusing because we have this really gross understanding of what attachment is, Oh, I like chocolate cake, I'm so attached. That's like the grossest tip of the iceberg. It's so primordial, it's so constant. We don't notice it most of the time, We don't, in fact, even in our ordinary world, it's considered a normal state of mind. What Buddha would call a serious mental illness, we consider in modern psychology as a normal state of mind of a normal person. So, to even identify it is not that easy for us, So like I said, when we begin to understand the relationship between attachment and aversion, in our world we know about anger. We know about anger. We use it, we know the word, we can see the result. And we might sort of know, we might know an aspect of attachment called, manipulating, called expectation, controlling. They're all aspects of attachment. We know those problems. People who are possessive, that's attachment. They're aspects of attachment. But we would never see them all as part of all symptoms of one problem called attachment. We see them as different problems. And then we see attachment to alcohol, attachment to doing obsessive, compulsive, all these words we have in modern psychology, compulsive, obsessive, all those words, ADID, HD, all those things, they're all simply a function of attachment. But we have them as identified as 20 different problems. But they're all symptoms of attachment, various ways of how attachment works, And then the thing for sure in our world, we never see any relationship between attachment and aversion. Whereas aversion is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And attachment 24 is just constantly raging, frantic to get what this supposed I wants all the time. So there's this intimate relationship. What's wrong? What's going on here?
There's other people just arrived.
So we can't talk then. We have to stop.
No, she's just trying to get positive.
I know, but we shouldn't be we didn't know you were here. We're so sorry. Do you mind if we all talk away here?
They just arrived.
I know. Do you mind if we talk about Buddhism here?
No. It's okay. We don't know if it isn't here.
Do you mind if we talk here?
It's okay.
You don't mind?
Okay.
Sorry if we are interrupting.
No.
What?
They were apologizing for interrupting.
No, we
If we interrupted you.
No, because there was nobody else here before, but then you came in, so we don't want to disturb you. We can move upstairs.
No.
So you don't mind if we have a little chat here for half an hour?
No, we just need dinner.
Okay. Okay, good.
You're just craving some food.
That's good. Okay. So anyway, so what other? So are we hearing what I'm saying? Are we communicating? And because this is normal, this is called normal life. We don't consider this a problem until it's serious, until it's a serious attachment, until you're having a freak out, until you're having a panic attack, until you want to kill yourself or kill someone else. It's then we think we've got a problem. But we've got the problem the whole time. Even as we're sitting here now, these states of mind are all functioning, all doing their jobs non-stop, So of course, all we can do is start where we are, and start at the grossest level, and then you keep getting more subtle. And that's why one of the things is we really understand the Buddhist analysis of these states of mind, how deep they go, then we'll have some humility about it and not be so eager to, suddenly we think we should be better by now, These old habits are going to be very deep in our mind. They're going to be there until we die, many of these habits, because they're so primordial. But we have to learn to start at the grossest level, harnessing first our behaviour, don't follow the thoughts, and then learn to hear the thoughts and learn to live with them. And that's one of our biggest problems, because attachment doesn't like problems. So attachment also doesn't like when we see our own crazy mind. You see what I'm saying? But we've got to learn to counteract that and learn to be glad that we're seeing our crazy mind and learn to live with it and be kind to ourselves about it, rather than wishing it would all just go away, because that's naive, Because it's a way to go. It's a way to go. I mean, Lama Zopa says, you've got what renunciation is, which is the first a really advanced stage already of spiritual realization. You've got renunciation, which is the accomplishment of first and second stages of practice, really controlling your body, speech and mind after much work. you've got renunciation when just the thought of another moment of attachment is so disgusting. It's like being in a septic tank. So that's, I mean, it's our default mode. So when we hear that, you may not be depressed by it, but be humbled by it. Okay, we've got a way to go. So we just have to keep working with it and living with it. And that's why the first level, which sounds kind of boring to us, control your body and speech first. It sounds boring. Oh, I want to meditate, please. But we've got to harness your body and speech. I mean, that's why AA is such a good example. They talk about giving up alcohol. And then 24 hours a day you say, you know you don't have the alcohol. That's controlling your body. And look at the result. Then you can start to look at your mind. Then the real work starts, you know. And that's the same here. If we can control our body and control our speech, 99% of the problems in our lives won't exist. Because that's what causes problems with other people. And if we can really use the power of our own mind to control the body and speech, then we can begin to really use the power of our mind to control our mind. Do you understand, people? These poor guys wouldn't have their beer, look. Chuck them down like a football. So anyway, what else, people? Other things? Food for thought? Food for thought, anybody? Questions? People? Something? Yes, where? Yes, go, darling.
Robina, could you talk a bit about, I've just been thinking about dependent arising.
Yep.
What the relationship is with karma.
Karma? Well, karma's... Okay, dependent arising. One way of describing what Buddha says about the whole world is that everything exists in dependence upon something else. We'd say nothing exists. What is the saying we have? You don't exist in an island. You don't exist in things don't exist in isolation. That's a really perfect way of saying everything's dependent arising. So in a way we understand it philosophically in our own worlds. You know that everything you do has to depend upon other things. And as soon as we all know, as soon as you start going, being too self-centered, you're not considering all the dependent bits, then nothing works. So this is really just explaining that everything exists interdependently. And everything exists interdependently. But when ego's involved, ego grasping, thinks the exact opposite. So when we understand dependent arising, Buddha taught 3 different levels of dependent arising. That things exist first in dependence upon causes. Now, karma is a perfect example of that first level of dependent arising. And you could say, like the way ego grasping is now, especially if you're a materialist and you have this view, we have this view instinctively, I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. And that's the way we function in our life. If you look at how we function in our life, as if somehow what happens to us has never got anything to do with me. I'm this innocent victim. Things happen to me unfairly. That's exact expression of the belief that there's anything that I'm not part of it. There's no dependence. So when you start to realize karma, that everything you experience is the fruit of what you have done, that's dependent arising. It's a really powerful way to loosen the grip of ego grasping, to think about causes. But for us, it's always someone else does it to me and I'm innocent. Do you understand? That's how we feel. And that's exactly the opposite of the first one. So thinking about causes, but causes of me and my experiences, you're putting yourself in the middle of it and you're making yourself one of the main causes. So it's much more dynamic. That's a really powerful way to loosen ego grasping. That's the first level of dependent arising. Then you've got the subtler levels. So that's already fantastic to think about. Yeah. And we'll talk more about karmas when we get up there, you know. What else, people? You have to ask me questions. Sorry. No? Nothing? Go, Chuck.
Thank you. Is there a Buddhist equivalent to grace, which I've heard defined as an unmerited gift?
I understand. That's very interesting. So talk about what you think it would be. How would you describe it?
Well, for instance, the blessings that I enjoy in my life today, I did describe earlier as grace. It's an unmerited gift. I don't know.
Unmerited gift. So who gives it? But someone's giving it. So who's the giver of this grace?
It's a good point.
I know. It's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's implied.
Right.
So if you're a Christian, that's perfect. I'm not complaining, I'm not criticizing, but that for sure is a blessing. So but Buddhism speaks exactly the same way. And it's a blessing from the Buddhas. So Buddha's a being who's perfected their mind, who's omniscient, who pervades the universe, who has infinite compassion, which is really the definition of God. The difference is that Christians say that God made the universe, whereas Buddha doesn't have that view. But there's countless beings who've achieved Buddhahood. Well then, when you have in that way you can say one way of saying what blessings are, when your mind is open, and there's, okay, I prefer to use ordinary examples. If you're just learning music, and you've got a teacher there. That teacher's your mentor. You admire them, you look up to them, don't you? That means your heart's open to their advice, isn't it? So when your heart's open to their advice and they give you some advice, you get it. Well, that's like a blessing. That's really what it is. So for me, a way of saying it is like when a heart is open and your mind is open, your heart is open, which is devotion, then things can come in. But if you're very rigid, very tight, very arrogant, very angry, very depressed, you can receive nothing. So it's a very simple way of putting what devotion is. And all here we're talking is devotion to the Buddhas, devotion to enlightened beings, so that we can become like that ourselves. That makes sense, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's that. I mean, go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go on. What?
The discussion moved to sowing, the sowing of negative seeds versus the sowing of positive seeds. And early in my life, I sowed a lot of negative.
That's
seeds.
right, all of us, yeah.
And now I'm
trying to sow positive seeds.
I'm trying to sow
exactly.
positive seeds.
So how do you? So that's another way of putting karma, really, and that's something. Children and I were just talking about this now, because we're so attached to feeling good. This is something we talked about this yesterday. Attachment is this junkie in us that only wants nice feelings. And when we get nice feelings, we call that happiness. So then we think everything's wonderful, isn't it? But half the time our happy feelings are just coming from it's like the happy feelings of a junkie, It's caused by attachment and it doesn't last. So and then we come into our spiritual practice and we actually do the same thing. We think, first of all, then we used to think, I'll get a boyfriend, then I'll get happy. I'll have cake, I'll get happy. I'll have a thin body, I'll get happy. So now we think, if I practice Dharma, I'll get happy. In a way, it's mistaking it and thinking now you're looking forward to happy feelings again. But somehow, what we've got to realize that there can be some result right now. We can learn to feel better now, but many times the dirt's going to come out. It's going to feel worse in many ways. And we often judge that as being, oh my God, I'm a disaster. But on the contrary, not. But the real point I'm trying to get at is, we want immediate results. But what we're talking here, the Buddhist view, is we're talking countless lives. So if we have the view that we're sowing seeds, then you don't have this fantasy craving expectation of if you go out to your garden tomorrow and there's nothing there, but you put some seeds in the ground, when you wake up next morning and you see the ground still looks empty, you don't go kill yourself because you know they're going to take more than a day. And in fact, your oak tree might take 50 years. So when you know the real thing you're doing every day in that garden is working with it, putting some water in, pulling out the weeds, you've got this patience that knows the result will come in 50 years. That's the patience we have to have now, not just judge on how we feel now as to whether I'm a good practitioner. Because the benefits, the real one is sowing seeds. Every second that we realise that, then we've got this long-term benefit. I mean, that's the really important view to have, and that's not that easy because we're such junkies for good feelings now. Do you understand? But it's not the main criterion of success. Not at all. That's hard for us because we don't have a view of karma. We have it in ordinary life. If you're going to have a garden, you're going to wait 50 years for your garden. You don't mind. If you're going to become a musician, you've got to wait 50 years. You can't become Federer overnight. So we do have that when it comes to accomplishing other things. But when it comes to accomplishing like what we're calling here, developing realizations and lessening delusions and growing goodness, this is going to take a lot longer. We've got to have this real patience, and be happy to sow seeds. When you come in from your garden one day, you're exhausted. You're covered in dirt and you're exhausted. But you're happy. Because you've been sowing seeds and pulling out the weeds. That's the view we've got to have with our practice. And that's not easy. Because we want to feel nice now. We're junkies. And that's what we've got to know. Got to have a good teachers to know what does it mean, sow good seeds? What are the criteria of that? And we're going to go into that in more detail. What is it that determines the things I think and do and say are sowing the right seeds? We've got to have a clear kind of guidelines. Do you understand? Yeah. So that means really, the essence of all the wisdom wing talk is about the mind and about karma, and we'll talk about that. And then, of course, finally to emptiness and dependent arising. And then we've got the compassion wing, which we haven't even begun to talk about yet. But that's the end result of it. That's where you continue working on your mind, but now it's more in reference to sentient beings. The first part is all the nuts and bolts of Buddha's teachings that you apply to yourself. This is the main part of Buddha's teachings, you know, that you apply to yourself. The compassion wing, as much as continuing to work on yourself, you also, now it's to help you help others. That's the point, you know. Yeah. And then we'll talk too about all this business of devotion and the Buddhas and all those practices and the visualizations and the prostrations and the water bowls, where all that stuff fits, because it seems odd. We can't kind of feel, well, that fits with this, you know. But the thing to remember is that Tsongkhapa, like our 14th century lineage Lama, as he said in one of his texts, that there's no contradiction. All the teachings are to be taken as sound advice, because there is no contradiction between scripture and practice. And all that means is, if you had a cookbook, you know perfectly well every single word in that cookbook has to be taken as sound advice. If there's anything in that cookbook that doesn't help you make cakes, it's contradictory. It's bizarre, isn't it? You chuck the book back. Every word in that book has to be taken as sound advice, because there is no contradiction between the recipes and the cake. We know that's true, so that's the same here. So that means, and that's why it's so important, if we say, come in, especially to Tibetan Buddhism, all these things that just look like religious ritual, you think, where in the name of God does all this fit, you know? But if there is any system, any method, any word, any philosophy, any metaphysical thing, any practice, any ritual that isn't to help you develop your mind, lessen delusions and grow goodness, then it is a complete waste of time. Don't do it. So that's why we have to take it at our own pace, but check up what it is logically. What is the benefit? Why would you do a prostration? What does a water bowl mean? What do these things mean? What's the benefit? How are they going to be helping me develop my mind? And if you think they're just a mere ritual, then that's superstition, and that's really shocking, you know. And that's why we've got to take these things on board as according to our own pace, and have some semblance of understanding of it, you know, and know the benefit of it. Yeah. What else, people? Questions? Where? Monique, yeah.
Sorry, one more.
Go.
So, if, just following on from what you
If what?
If you're trying to do purification, and you were saying that it's not really a concept, it's not really about forgiveness as such, but if you're doing like a meditation, say with a Vajrasattva, four opponent powers, is that not kind of like forgiveness? Because you're relying on...
But who's forgiving whom, first of all? So who's forgiving whom in this process? What are you talking about?
Well, if you're doing, a meditation where you're visualising purification coming from...
Okay, you visualize, in the third step, you visualize the Buddha,
Yeah.
and you're using your creative imagination. You're imagining nectar coming from the Buddha and coming into you, and you're imagining you're purifying.
Yeah.
So, what's that got to do with forgiveness?
Well, I don't know. I mean, isn't that kind of like relying on something outside of yourself?
But that doesn't mean it's forgiveness. You go to a doctor, and she tells you not to smoke because you might get cancer. She's advising you, right? You're relying on a doctor, right? Would you agree with that? So would you go to, like I said, where's it has got to do with the forgiveness? You take the medicine she gives you. You're relying on your doctor. Even as you take that medicine, you're thinking of your doctor. How's that forgiveness? What's that got to do with anything? No, analyse it. How's that possibly got to do with forgiveness? The concept of forgiveness, you're taking the Christian, nothing wrong with the Christian teaching, but you're taking the Christian view that forgiveness is what purifies you, because God's the boss.
Yeah.
So God made you, you go against his will. In other words, your mummy's in your house. Your mummy told you to make your bed. So you didn't do mummy's wishes, so you've disappointed mummy. It is true. You must go to her and ask her to forgive you. That's correct. And that even in our conventional life, that's valid. We will do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not our relationship with the Buddha. It's not his job to forgive you. You're not doing his wishes. It's only a person who, if a person asks you to do something, and it's there, and then you don't do it, then you should ask them to forgive you. But Buddha's just an advisor. If you think the doctor's a person who's telling you to do it because they're the boss, then you ask them to forgive you, and then you won't get cancer. So there's a very distinct point. Can you not hear me? Just because you rely upon a doctor doesn't mean they're forgiving you. Just because you rely upon the Buddha. Do you hear me or not?
I need to think about it.
But it's straightforward English words. You're a university professor. Whatever you are. But forgiveness means what? Speak out forgiveness. What does it mean? So you're thinking Buddha's there saying, Robina, you're a good girl after all, I forgive you, and now your sins are forgiven. That's forgiveness in religious terms. That's what you're suggesting.
So you do regret, reliance.
You do the practice. You visualize the Buddha purifying you.
Yeah.
Well, how is Buddha forgiving you? What does Buddha do? It's your mind. You're just imagining the Buddha. You're using the idea of the Buddha and you're imagining something. It's not about the Buddha, it's about you.
It's like a tool.
It's just a tool, darling. Do you see? Think of the context of forgiveness. Think of ordinary life. As soon as a person has the power to say to you, don't do that or do that, that's the person who has the power to forgive you. But if that's the, when you're not doing, like when you break the law, and then you give a good enough reason to the police, they might get you off. That's forgiveness. Because it's the policeman's job. He's got the power. Do you see what I'm saying? Buddha's not got that role. He's a doctor. He's a doctor whom you decide to rely upon, whose medicine you use to fix you. If he had the power to forgive, then you'd go to that doctor and say, please, I smoke cigarettes, and can you please forgive me so I don't get cancer? You know it doesn't work like that. Can you see the difference? The Buddha's an advisor. The doctor's an advisor. That's why they use the analogy of a doctor, of the Buddha. That's how your relationship with the Buddha. In this context. Do you understand? Okay. See, and that's why in some way as soon as people hear, not you now necessarily, when we hear about prayer, we have this assumption that prayer is to a creator. There's an assumption there. And then people hear that Buddhists say prayers. So the first commonest question people ask is, well, who are you praying to? Because we have an assumption that prayer is saying to God, please fix me. But that's not what's being said. You're not asking the Buddha to do that. You're relying upon somebody. So in that sense, I can tell you, from the time I was a Catholic, children are the same, we're both brought up as Catholics, I was in love with God and Our Lady and the saints and all those people, right? I can say the feeling for me, actually curiously, I never thought of God as my creator. I never thought like that. I didn't get guilty. I didn't feel bad, guilty and things, and ask for forgiveness. But the feeling I had that the same is exactly the same then as it is now for me in relation to the Buddha. And then, of course, the Guru, who's the human manifestation for us of the Buddha. It's exactly the same as the devotion I had as a child. So I didn't think of God as my creator. I never thought of that. I never thought of forgiveness. I never thought of those kind of things, So it's really the same. So what I'm talking about is the quality called devotion. And that's why I even mentioned a simple example of your music teacher. I mean, some people have a teacher from their kids, when they were kids. They adore that teacher. They'll never forget that teacher. That's devotion. You rely upon that person, they give you advice, you think about them. Like if you're playing the piano, you're thinking of what your teacher's telling you. We all have that. That's good, we need that. And that's no difference whether they're your creator or they're not your creator. In a way, that devotion is the same. Do you understand what I'm saying, people? Or not? I mean, Tibetan Buddhism is hugely into devotion. It's an essential part of the whole practice. We haven't talked about it yet, but we will more. And for me, it's got a logical function, a really logical function. It means your heart is open. It's related to devotion is related to humility, and an open heart. That's huge. That's really huge. And that facilitates things. If you're really devoted to your music teacher and really want to do their wishes, you're going to succeed very quickly because you'll be open to their advice and you'll take it and you'll do it, Do you understand? Whereas if you're sitting there being arrogant, I don't need a teacher, who do they think they are telling me what to do? You'll be paralyzed. Nothing will happen. I mean, they don't talk about this. They don't talk about devotion like this in the text, but you can see it's fairly obvious, We'll discuss this thing. I mean, relying upon the Buddha, relying upon the teachings, relying upon the teacher, That's an absolutely fundamental part of the practice. But it's logical if we we think of it in ordinary life examples. I always find that so powerfully important. Not just put it in some kind of religious context only, you know. It's logical. It's logical. There's nothing that we have done in our life since we're born that we didn't learn from someone who knows how to do it. That's called a teacher. It's obvious we need a teacher. It's obvious we need a teacher, you know. And here we're discussing uncharted territory of getting enlightened. Good Lord. We absolutely need wise advice. Otherwise we lose the plot, you know. But we have to do the work. We have to do it. So why don't we just let's just do Medicine Buddha again. We can think of you know, June's mummy, wherever June's mummy is now. Other people who've died, animals who've died, people who've died before, people who are sick. We just think of them. We visualize Medicine Buddha again, in a manifestation of enlightened energy in a form, that's all, that represents these particular qualities. It's like looking like the Buddha, but he's dark blue, sitting there, very radiant light. Imagine in the sky. And sending light. Just imagining sending light, entering into the hearts of all the people we want to think about, want to send good wishes to, want to pray for, put like that, want to send the energy to. People who've passed away, people who are sick. Think of them strongly, receiving this, blessing their mind, taking away all their suffering, giving them all their happiness. And into ourselves as well, completely purifying us. Completely purifying all the delusions, all the ridiculous ego grasping, all the attachment, all the fears, all the dramas, all this nonsense that breaks our hearts. Filling us completely. It's just that we say a few times the mantra, that's all. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samungate swaha. 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 So imagine Medicine Buddha melting into blue light and dissolving into all these beings, into all of us. Just dissolving into us. And then just bliss out for about a minute. No thoughts. Feel that you're as vast as space. Oneness with the Buddha. No thoughts. Imagine. Okay, so just a few minutes, we're thinking, talking, a little few things, seeds gone in, be delighted. And we dedicate thinking how we maybe nourish these seeds from this moment forward so we never give up on ourselves and being a benefit to others. Jangchub semchog rinpoche ma ke panam ke guchig ke panyampa me payang gong ne gongdu paba shog gewa di nyudu dag lama sange drub gyune drowa chikyang marupa de sala gurpa shog. So try and see your dreams as dreams again. That means when you're dreaming, you notice you're dreaming. Wow, I'm dreaming. So that's your subtle mind. So grab the opportunity and see if you can meditate. And then when you wake up, bliss out that you're not dead yet. Your petrol tank of morality hasn't run out yet. How amazing. We're going to hop out of bed in this nice, delicious weather and have our cold shower or whatever. Get all ready for our 6-hour walk. So we can become enlightened and benefit all sentient beings. Think you're walking to enlightenment, okay? While I fly to enlightenment. I've got the last 2 hours of walk. Have to do that, no choice. Okay, darlings, good night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you.